I think I was having symptoms for a couple of years until I actually got my diagnosis. I was 55 when I got diagnosed. I'm 58 now. I know I've got funny things. I can get lost. Like, I can go for a walk and get lost in a familiar place. So embarrassingly ridiculous. You know that feeling when you go into a room and you've lost your keys or you've lost your phone? Imagine that 20, 30 times a day. It's so draining. In the dark of night is horrible because you have that feeling of your mind plays tricks on you and it's not nice. So I keep losing my train of thought. This is Hold the Moment. I'm Jim Rogers and I'm living with younger onset Alzheimer's. I don't really want to be defined by dementia, but I've always been a chatterbox. And so while I've got a voice, I'm happy to use it. You've just got to try and change the narrative a little bit and make the best of what you got.
Dementia has just been viewed as a death sentence. It's kind of end of life, you get old, you lose your marbles, and then you die. We need to rethink that.
I've got Alzheimer's, deal with it.
That's why I think Jim's contribution is so critical. He's starting this conversation in a way that I think we haven't really had before.
It gives you such insight from the inside out.
He's become like the pin-up boy for Alzheimer's. He's just embraced it. He loves sharing his message.
And it's good to surround yourself with humour and people that make you laugh.
To know that you're not complaining. It's like, I'm never gonna complain again about anything.
I felt so inspired by this.
So was
I
I.
wanted to live life a little bit differently.
I definitely forget that he has dementia. There are times where I have to remind myself, because he is doing so well and he is busy.
Just put your lead on.
But I notice little things, like he opened the fridge and the spray and wipes ended up in there or something like that.
All good? I look fine, I seem fine. But I think we all just don't really want to know about what's ahead. You make sure you remember where we've gone, because I'll forget the way back. I'll get confused and unsure. It's really not nice. It feels as though you're losing that grasp. I just couldn't even believe, like, why had I got this? Like, where's it come from? I've got no one in my family directly who suffered. There's no strong line of familial descent. I grew up in the Midlands in the UK, a very ordinary, happy childhood. I just went with the flow as you do, as you go through life. I knew Lorna from the town that I lived in.
Lorna was a local girl. They just knew each other through school. They'd go on these Beatle rallies, and before you know it, they were an item. But their feet never touched the floor. They were so compatible.
We had the best time, like very wild, quite impulsive. Got married, had a beautiful wedding.
Millie came along. Harvey wasn't too far behind. And then Daisy just happened, and yeah, 3 children, very close.
We had 3 under 3, so we had our work cut out for us. If you're familiar with the UK weather, it's not good. And the more we found out about Australia, the more intrigued we became. So in 1996, we moved to Australia with the 3 kids. We didn't know anybody. So we took this adventure on.
They wanted a better quality of life. They wanted the sunshine. And they just were always people that were seeking adventure and a bit of a thrill.
Oh my God! I remember this box.
Just look how battered it is.
We need to get a new.
This has been all around the world.
It has.
We were in Australia for about 3 years. And then one day, Lorna said to me, I've got this irritating mole on my calf, and it was a melanoma. This just knocked us for 6.
I think more with Lorna, she was very much, I think we need to go home. I think we need to be around family.
Oh my God.
Look. We were back in the UK and Lorna was walking down the road and she just stopped and said, oh shit, I've got a lump. We knew that wasn't good. And the specialist said, it's actually very advanced. We think it's only a few days that she's going to pass away.
Dad came home. He said, it's going to be us from now on. Mum's not coming back. Mum won't be home.
We just didn't believe him. And I remember thinking he was not joking, but just it wasn't right. So I thought she was playing hide and seek, and I went to find her and I couldn't. And at that point, yeah, I realised she's not coming back.
When Lorna passed away, I really tried hard to, the kids were so young, so I just tried to preserve as many things as possible and keep them.
Millie was about 6, 7, Harvey 5, Daisy nearly 4.
Like this, when you open it,
Yeah,
you can feel her.
I know.
You can. I literally then went into super dad. You know, I had to dust myself off and make sure everything was done.
Like the world around us was just, yeah, falling apart, but he was holding it up for us as best as he could.
Well, I don't remember what it was like having a mum, so now being a mum, I can't even believe that you went through it with 3 kids so young.
It was a dark time.
Awful.
I'd get them into school and I would literally drag myself back home and just wallow in a black cloud all day. I think it was around 18 months after losing Lorna, and my parents said, we think you should have a holiday and you should have a break, and we've booked it, you are going to go. So I went, and there's a nice group of people down at the pool, and the guy that I was sat next to, I said, you know, have you got a girlfriend or are you married or whatever? And he said, no, I'm gay. And that was Tyler.
He was very good looking guy. And I just clocked him as soon as I saw him. I was like, wow.
Yeah, and we just hit it off, really.
Yeah.
Just re-elevated my mood. So before he knew it, I was sort of looking forward to seeing him when he would walk in by the pool, you know, and start chatting with him again. It started from there.
Yeah.
Once I got home, he'd be ringing to chat, and I was starting to have feelings for him, and it was becoming more intimate. For me, personally, it's all about the person, the connection with the person.
It became more, obvious that we were on a journey together.
Cheers. I started to think, this is ridiculous, this can't go on. Like, this is a man for a start. I've got responsibilities, I've got kids. I just can't do this. And he said, no, there's something so strong here, like I can't just walk away from you.
Dad's new friend, Tyler. I remember this really generous guy that was around and fun.
And we talked about all the different ways, avenues, and tried to explore how we could make it work as a future. And he literally said, the only way that this can work is like if the house next door came up for sale.
And the next thing, out of the blue, he called me and he said, next door sold, I've bought it, I'm moving up.
We could live as two straight guys out the front, and then we had our gardens connected.
And back then, as a child, you think that that is your dad's friend, you know, like a uncle or whatever.
Do you remember back to when you first met Ty? Can you remember those things?
I do. I remember. It was Easter. But I remember he was just the nicest person and just really fun. And
Jim
just
was
lovely.
very much focused on himself, his children, his family, his friends, and being gay wasn't part of that at that time.
Do you remember how old you were?
I reckon 10.
Yeah. 10, 9, 8, easy.
10, 9,
I always wanted them not to stand out. And in those days, homophobia was massive. It was a big deal. Now you've got your own partners, you realise the severity of the situation.
Dad had made a promise to himself that if we had said, who is Ty, what is Ty, that he would always be honest and tell the truth. And, you know, because as you grow, you sort of put two pieces together.
You said to me you'd got a friend who'd got 2 mums. Can you remember that?
Yeah, so Rosie had 2 mums. And I said to Dad, well, that would be like you and Ty. And Dad stopped the car and just told me the whole story.
It was like that penny dropping of like,
This is real
now. So I thought my life was over, to be honest. I was like, this is unbelievable. Like I didn't know anyone in the same position. I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I didn't know really anything.
I remember you saying, why did you have to just ruin it because everything was so nice and now it's different? Fortunately for me, they loved Ty already and they bonded. And so it just grew and grew and grew.
They didn't see me as any kind of threat. They didn't, I wasn't coming to take their dad away from them. I was just his friend.
So it was a lot to handle.
But it took time to adjust, and I think moving to Australia made it easier for us.
I didn't want to come back to Australia. It was so painful for me personally, having lost Lorna after all of that. So for me, I'd parked it. And then some friends came over from Perth, and it brought about so many memories. And before you knew it, back to Perth we went. It was a really happy, happy time.
We moved to Sydney, and Jim was renovating houses and then teaching other people how to renovate houses.
Pretty high profile job. He seemed to love it. Very stressful job.
When you're ordering like bricks and stuff like that, when you start to make mistakes, you notice it.
My team definitely started to notice him missing a few details, and they started having those conversations where, I told you that, Jim. So it was really sort of minor things at first.
I'm confused, and he would say, what is wrong with you, This is not how you...
Snap out of it, come on.
Yeah. And then I'd think, oh, maybe I'm tired, or maybe I'm overloaded or stressed. One day I went to my cardiologist, and she was getting a bit pissed off with me because my phone was constantly going off. She was like, could you put it on silent? And I had this blank where I couldn't even work it out. It was her that said to me, are you experiencing problems like this? So she then referred me to a memory clinic. They analyse all sorts of things about the way you perceive information. They sent me for brain scans. They do all sorts of stuff.
And she asked you to touch my left cheek with your right hand, and you did the opposite. And I just started crying because I knew something was wrong.
They asked me to have an appointment with the neurologist. She explained that from the cognitive I forgot what I was saying now.
The neurologist gave him his diagnosis, pretty straight. She was very clear that it was younger-onset Alzheimer's. So yeah, very confronting, very sad.
And I looked at Ty and he was clearly very upset. And so I knew it was heavy, but I didn't know much about Alzheimer's. I just thought it was an old person's disease. And my neurologist recommended that I reach out to Dementia Australia. How are you?
I'm well.
Yeah, I'm good.
Now, what brings you today?
When I had my diagnosis, I really knew nothing about dementia, and I felt as though suddenly a clock had been switched on to how long I'd got until I was going to be, losing my faculties, and it's so brutal.
Yeah.
Because there is no cure, and that's the worst thing.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about dementia. Dementia is a bit of an umbrella term. There's over 100 different conditions that can result in people being diagnosed with dementia, and symptoms can be different for each of those conditions. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, and any dementia that starts under the age of 65 is referred to as younger onset.
Okay. The worst thing about this disease is just you don't know how quick will it develop. That's the worst part. You think, I could put that off, and think, well, what if I go downhill?
When he got diagnosed, they immediately took his driver's license away from him. So he lost all of his autonomy. He loved driving, and that's a major access that you've just been taken away.
Eventually, this disease steals bit by bit more from you, and so you struggle to just stay who you are. If we go out to dinner, I can't carry a four-way conversation anymore. It's just a blur of noise. I'm so sleep deprived. I have such terrible, vivid nightmares, and I rely on medication to get me to sleep.
They advised him to retire. They said, these are the best years that you've got. And I remember him just thinking, like, why is this happening to me? Like, what have I done to be dealing with this? I've gone through enough in my life, like, why? And he sort of went into a hole and really struggled.
When things are going wrong, it can cause him to be very frustrated very quickly, which is something that he never used to do. That can be challenging to deal with.
I was so down and depressed for a long time, and it was at that point when Ty said, if you don't stop worrying about everything, you're going to miss the now. So let's just have some fun with the grandkids and the kids and have some happy times and really make the most of it.
The reason that I was so forceful with him to snap out of it was because I wanted selfishly to enjoy that now with him for as long as I can.
Call out 4, 5, 5. Good. Keep these level. There you go. 2.
He told me that he had been given sort of like a 10-year lifespan where the diagnosis was for the next 5 years, they'll be great, and the last 5 are going to be not so great. That's when you really go downhill. So he really needed to look after himself.
Try to keep your arm still. It's just a hook to hold the weight.
Unfortunately, Alzheimer's is terminal and there is no way to stop it. However, there are things you can do to try and live well with dementia. I swim every day now and I train in the gym. I try to avoid meat and I try to practice gratitude, and I do yoga for relaxation of my brain.
He's not going to let it beat him. He's adamant he is going to see it to the end as best as he can see it to the end. He's going to take it by the horns and go for it.
I got quite involved with Dementia Australia, and then they asked me if I would like to co-host a podcast with Hamish MacDonald. Hey, Hamish. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Nice to see you.
Welcome down.
Thank
I knew I'd be co-hosting with someone living with dementia. And I'm thinking, gosh, how's this going to work? Anyway, I met Jim and of course I was sold.
Hi, I'm Jim Rogers and I'm living with younger-onset Alzheimer's.
And I'm Hamish MacDonald. And this is Hold a Moment, a podcast from Dementia Australia.
Jim is someone with a lot to give, and my sense is he knows that maybe there's a limit to how long he can continue to give to others for, but while he can, he's doing it as much as he possibly can. I think we all assume that if you're diagnosed with dementia, that's the end of your contribution to life, to society, to the world.
Nail on the head.
And I kind of think that what you've been doing over the last couple of years might be one of the most significant things you've done.
Yeah, I think...
I love that he's figuring it out whilst he's doing the podcast, and things he's learning as he's learning, he can share.
If there's one thing that you want to change Australia's mind about, what is it?
I think it's just the stigma that comes with dementia, that literally anyone with dementia is rattling around in a cardigan with their food down the front and that they've lost all their faculties. I think it's a much slower process than that.
Right, so the driver's arrived.
Okay.
I might jump in this side if you go the other.
I'll go around.
Going into this, I kind of expected that I was there a bit to sort of look after the co-host, right? I think the reality is that during this whole process, it's actually me that needed help. My dad died during the making of this. Yeah, did they tell you about my dad when they were initially pitching the podcast?
Yeah, I did ask why it was you that, was going to be doing the co-hosting. Hamish went through a long, hard phase caring for his dad, who had Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia.
When this first started, I was probably feeling quite angry about dementia. And it was just, I guess for me, it was transformative.
Did you feel like the podcast lifted you up a little bit in the fact that, all the people that we met and the stories that we heard?
Like I was not at all expecting it to be a hopeful experience or a positive experience, but it actually was. It totally reshaped how I thought about looking after my dad, and it adjusted what I did with Dad. I just made sure that as often as we could, we'd just go for a swim at the ocean pool, so that not everything we did together was centred around dementia. I think being in the water for Dad was sort of the only place where he could feel like himself.
Yeah.
Because
it was affecting him.
Well, on land, his legs were
horrible.
No good and he required help. Jim always wanted to know how Dad was doing. And I guess to some degree, I was a little cautious about sharing too much. If you're living with dementia and you are entering those end stages, there's not a heap of good stories to tell. I think the reality for my dad was that by the end he was pretty ready to go.
And go, Louis!
There's probably things that he shields from me and he shields from the kids. He puts on a brave face.
It is getting harder for him to protect us like he did when Mum died, because it's like the cracks are starting to show and you can't cover those cracks up because they're real and they're happening. And we're saying to him all the time, we're here, we're adults, you've done enough for us, let us in.
Everyone has to say, forget me not.
Forget me not.
He's presenting this version of himself to them all that is bright and full of life and full of love, because he wants them to have the best experience of him that they can possibly have. And I get it. But I guess my experience of dealing with my dad's situation was I just wished so many decisions and conversations had been made earlier on.
I go, you should get it. And he goes, I'm thinking about getting an e-bike. Have you seen them? I said, yeah, I've seen them. He goes, well, I've been eyeing this one off and I'm really keen on it.
We talked about the later stages. What does he want to do? What does that look like? I think the hardest conversations are about what it looks like when he doesn't remember us.
I feel like we're on a train track to hell and there's no stopping the train. We can maybe slow it down a little bit, but the train's heading that way.
What do you think about the whole euthanasia thing?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
But he said that he didn't want to be a burden on people. And when it gets to that point, he'd rather maintain control. What do you think?
I think if I was in his position, I'd feel the same.
Yeah,
But then I also believe he won't know.
And I certainly am not an advocate for euthanasia or anything like that. But what I can say is I hate the thought of where I could go. And I don't know if it takes more strength to do something about it and take control, or more strength to go the journey of where you're going to go.
So he's right on the cusp of it now, where it's like, if you want to make this choice, or if you want to put that into action, you actually have to be onto it now.
Really?
While you've still got the mind and the capability of it. Because as soon as he goes too far,
Yeah.
he doesn't get the choice.
That is scary.
That's scary. But he's got my support if he wants it.
Fortunately for me right now, I'm fine. But I think if the warning signs became more intense, I think I would try and go further down that route and have a look.
Dad always wanted an old Queenslander in the country, an hour away, on a bit of land.
It's called Forget Me Not Cottage, like an oath to Dad. You can tell that he's just put all of him into it, and I think he's done that intentionally so that, you know, every time we look at those things, we'll always remember little things about him.
Anyone that has been up close to dementia in any way would struggle to describe silver linings. But I think what I have learned through this, through Jim, through my dad, is that life is not over the minute you get a diagnosis, and that actually there is joy to be had.
The potatoes look delicious. Everybody knows in life that we're all going to go out the same door, and so having an early diagnosis actually is a gift in a way, because you can find suddenly the time to do the things that you maybe would have put off. But the most important thing is seeing us all together. I want to cram so much in. I'm so full of life and full of love. I love people.
Yeah, can we do a beautiful toast to the chef who's worked so hard, and thanks to everyone.
You can live well with dementia. You've just got to adapt to it.
Another lovely weekend together.
Thanks for everybody's help today.
Yeah. Love you all.